You don't need a hook. We're talking about Buffy Season 2. Hey there, welcome to another edition of the Sunday Scaries. I'm your host, Mike, and I'm bringing you a Tuesday Terror as we work through the Buffy the Vampire series, reviewing season number 2, which is one of my favorites. And this is the first season firing on all cylinders. But before we get into the story, please subscribe and like, and know that there will be some spoilers in this since we're reviewing all 7 seasons and going to rank them. Now this season picks up right after the summer after Buffy defeats the master vampire, and she's back. She was with her dad for the summer, staying with him, and she's got a little PTSD given that the master did kill her for even just a few minutes. But she's recovering. And the first part of this season is pretty lighthearted. They got relationships going across the board. Giles and Jenny Calendar start to kind of date, and Buffy and Angel are in a relationship. Xander and Cordelia kind of start hitting it off and have this like secret relationship and attraction. And then there's a new character, Oz, who's played by Seth Green, and I absolutely love his character. He's so much fun, and he's really interested in Willow, and that's her first relationship, and he pursues her. He ends up actually being a werewolf, which is a lot of fun, and he doesn't really know it. He got bit, and then it turns into this whole thing. It's pretty lighthearted, and the big addition as far as villains go is Spike and Druscilla come, and Spike is played by James Masters, and he is just an awesome character in this show. He's one of my favorites. He's so interesting to watch, and he starts out as a bad guy, and he comes in, and the vampire community is being ran by this little kid called the Anointed One who survived from the first season. And Spike comes in, and he's killed 2 Slayers, so he immediately kind of sets the tone of somebody who could actually hurt Buffy. And he's studying and watching her, and he has a relationship with Angel, because before Angel had a soul, he ran with Spike and Druscilla, and they're just evil. And when he fails his first mission, the Anointed One's telling him he should beg for his life, and he puts that little kid in this cage, and he sends him up to the sun and burns him alive. And you're like, this guy's here to cause trouble, right? And so that's kind of the first half of the season, and there's some fun filler episodes. There's some good monsters and different mysteries that they're trying to uncover. But the first half, again, it's not danger looming too much. And then you get to the middle of the season, and there's this whole thing where Jenny Calendar is actually a gypsy, and she's a member of this tribe, but her friends don't know, and she's the tribe that cursed Angel, and she's tasked to make sure the curse is not broken. And to break the curse, Angel needs to experience one moment of true happiness. And they don't really know what that means exactly. He's falling in love with Buffy, and clearly that's going down a path where it could jeopardize this. And Spike and Druscilla, during one of their plots, wants to bring back this horrible demon called the Judd, and they put him back together. He can't actually be killed. He's separated into a bunch of different pieces. And after this narrow victory between Spike and Druscilla, Buffy and Angel actually sleep together for the first time. And, you know, Buffy is a teenager. She doesn't really know what she's doing. Angel succumbs to his, desire for Buffy, and that's what actually causes him to lose his soul. And he takes off before, as he feels his soul leaving him, and he becomes Angelus, which is what he used to call himself when he was a demon without a soul. And he immediately links back up with Spike and Druscilla, which Spike is in a wheelchair at the moment because he got injured during a battle, and they start causing all kinds of havoc. And Angelus may be the worst villain that the show ever brought out as far as the amount of damage he does to the Scooby Gang. He ends up killing Jenny Calendar. He completely torments Buffy. He goes to her mom and tells him he slept with her daughter, and she doesn't know he's a vampire. She doesn't know vampires exist at this point, and completely shattering the image that Joyce has for her daughter Buffy. He also attacks all the members of the Scooby Gang individually, hurts them in some ways. I mean, he's just vicious, and he really wants to bring the end of the world. And so this all ends up concluding in this huge battle. Buffy has to make a deal with Spike, who's getting jealous because Angelus is moving in on Druscilla, who's the love of his evil eternity. And they're a funny truce and duo in this season. And it all leads to Buffy having to kill Angel. Also, what's really interesting about this season is there's actually a second Slayer, because Buffy died for even just a short period of time, which triggered another Slayer being activated, who's Kendra. And she's actually really cool in this season, but we don't get much time with her. Circling back to Angelus might be the worst villain the show ever saw as far as damage. Him and Druscilla end up devising this plot that actually gets Kendra killed. And the few episodes we have with her, she's awesome, and Buffy and her have this whole sister relationship kind of going. Anyways, that all leads to having to kill Angel, and they do a spell actually, and this season Willow actually starts to dabble in magic, and it turns out she has some Wiccan power type things, and she tries to restore his soul, and it works at the very last minute after Angel's already opened this portal to hell, or that's opening a portal to hell through this demon that's going to swallow the world into hell. And Buffy has to kill Angel, not Angelus, and he doesn't even remember what happened, and she has to stab him with this sword in order to kill him. So this season has everything from fun relationship stuff, cool monsters, different mysteries, to an epic battle with an epic villain, some great new villains, and one of the biggest sacrifices in the show that ever happened. And just some highlight episodes, you know, Spike attacking the school, the whole Judd scene, the Inca mummy with Xander, and he's always fun to get a butt of the joke as far as attracting demons. Little side ones like that. Also, the swimming episode is a personal favorite of mine, where the swim team's turning into monsters, and at that point Xander's going undercover to the swim team, and he's dating Cordelia, and then she starts freaking out. He's going to turn into a monster. But there's a bunch of fun episodes like that, and then of course all the Spike and Druscilla and Angelus stuff versus Buffy, and then the Judd is a two-part episode where I really like the Judd. He's just so creepy and fun. So there's a lot to really like. Now, as far as themes and concepts that this one tackles that are a little bit different than the previous one, first off is this theme of betrayal, right? Buffy sleeps with Angel and he becomes this entirely different person, and a mass murderer for that matter, but he loses his soul. And even though it's not really him and the boy that she was in love with, there's still this sense of now the person she loved most that still knows all the different things she was sharing with him and confidence. He knows all her weaknesses and is playing on them, and it's just this complete utter devastation for Buffy, because she's being attacked at her most vulnerable points, and Angelus just loves to torment her, and it's just horrible. And I don't think any other season really deals with the whole concept of betrayal quite like this one does with Buffy and Angelus. And then you also have Spike, who betrays Angelus out of jealousy because he's in love with Druscilla, and it's very clear that he's threatening their relationship, and you know, he'd been out of the picture for so long. And the fact that Spike would, you know, just team up with Buffy, a Slayer, which he hates Slayers. And granted, also some of it's too is he didn't want to see the world end because he selfishly loves to torment people. You know, that was another kind of betrayal. And then you also have Xander with this secret relationship with Cordelia, which really hurts Willow. And Willow and Xander actually start to show a little bit of, hey, we might be interested in each other before Oz and Cordelia come in, which we'll talk about in the next season. And then you also have Jenny, because she was lying to Buffy and Giles and Xander and Willow the whole time about who she really was. She was sent there by her tribe, and you know, she was spying on everyone to make sure Angel never got his true moment of happiness, not because they really knew he'd become this vicious killer again, but just because they wanted him to suffer. And this one continues the theme that Buffy's gonna have to sacrifice everything that is good for her for the world. And it starts with just her relationship with her mom. At the very end of the season, her mom finally finds out she's a vampire slayer, and they get in this huge fight. And her mom tells her, don't come back into this house, you know, if you walk out that door. And in the last episode, and she takes off and she feels like she can't home. You know, feels like to her she has to sacrifice her relationship with her mom. She gets expelled from school for trying to do the right thing and save the world. And then it all leads to fighting Angel. And in order to save the world, she has to kill the boy she loved. You think about that sacrifice, I mean, it's just heart-wrenching and brutal. And this probably isn't the absolute lowest point Buffy ever hits through the series, though you could argue it is. No matter how you look at it, tons of self-sacrificing here for the good of everyone else in the world. And as far as punishment goes, having to atone for your sins being an eternal punishment, that's something I think is really cool about Angel, that the gypsies chose to give him back his soul so he could feel all the moral issues that he crossed, all the moral lines that he crossed, suffer for all the people he hurt. And, you know, sometimes I think we fear punishment in the forms of like prison and, you know, like the death penalty or, you know, being taken away privileges, but imagine actually having to have full understanding of some of the most horrible things you could possibly do to people. When you did them, you had no morality inside you, but that's re-given to you, and you have to suffer for those things and see the faces of everyone you hurt over and over again for eternity, because you're not going to ever die. That's a brutal punishment. And I think when you really look at Angel deeply, a great concept. And I know he's not the most interesting character in some respects when he's good. And, you know, I think that's why some fans don't like him the best for Buffy, though a lot do. I think it's torn like 50-50, but there is this debate of who Buffy's true love was. But there's no denying that there's some deeply philosophical layers to Angel's story and his journey. And the last thing you can kind of tackle from the very end of the season is, should Buffy have actually killed Angel? I mean, his soul got restored. He technically was innocent in the standpoint of he wasn't doing all those things. It was just the demon inside him, and his soul wasn't there, and he clearly wouldn't have made those choices. But the whole world would end if Buffy didn't kill him. She had to kill him to send him to hell, of all places. Not just kill him, but he's gonna burn in hell potentially for eternity. And, you know, he didn't really do the things that caused the world to end. It was this demon that took over his body because he lost his soul. So adding to the gut-wrenching moment that she has to kill him, it's also he's gonna go straight to hell. But it also kind of weighs in, is one person worth the whole world argument? And depending on, you know, how you analyze it from a theological view or just analyzing it from our own moral views here and with society and the way we've structured countries, you can kind of come to a few different answers. And I personally think Angel would have wanted himself sacrificed. He didn't fully understand what was going on at the time, but it is an interesting thing to think about when it comes to the death of Angel in this. And I think all her friends don't really feel much remorse about him because he tortured all of them so badly and killed people that they loved. You know, Buffy has to weigh that going into future seasons, and it really, really haunts her. All right, let's get in the rankings here. And you can probably tell I think very highly of this season, and it's definitely in the conversation for the best season in the Buffy universe. I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5. And I just think the overall depth of this season and just how big of an enemy Angelus ends up being, and with the additions of Spike and Druscilla, you know, it adds so much to the story. And the overall stakes in the season are so much higher than in the first season. As far as the fun meter goes, I also give this one a 5 out of 5. I think it's just a terrific ride from start to finish. Honestly, I think for me, the worst episode is the first one, just because Buffy is dealing with some PTSD and kind of not being the best version of herself. But I really enjoy all the fun side monsters and little side plots going on. I love Oz. I think he's just such a fun addition to the show, and I think he brings out something really different in Willow and makes her much more confident. That's how she gets into her Wiccan powers, and moving forward she'll be much more involved in witchcraft, which is going to help the Scooby Gang battle demons. You know, I love Xander's growth as well in this. Him and Cordelia are a lot of fun, and she is just a hot mess too, freaking out that she's into Dork. And then you have Spike too, which I love Spike. I mean, there's stuff about him I absolutely hate, and he's just one of those characters in a show. There's times you're like, I absolutely hate this person. Like, it's all the way up to here. You can't get much more evil than that. But then when he's even-toned or just like being fun, you can't take your eyes off him, and you can't get over the things he says, and he makes you laugh with just his crazy cockiness and sense of humor. And Spike was one of the best additions to the show. And all right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Please subscribe and like. And remember to tune in next Tuesday night for another Tuesday Terror, and we're going to review season 3 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is also a terrific season. And all I know is I'm glad next week we get to talk about season 3 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.